Before I introduce the speaker, who is Brewster Bevis, the CEO and president of Associated Industries of Florida, I think it's important to understand who is AIF, as we call it. For those that are familiar with the process, as we call it, the process of public policy making at the state level, Associated Industries is arguably, if not the premier business trade association representing businesses of all stripes here in Florida to pass public policy that is looking out for entrepreneurs and businesses. And last year we had Mark Wilson of the Chamber come and speak. And as president of NEBA this year, I wanted to make sure that AIF was represented because they have really, year in and year out, they do the yeoman's work of advocacy in the process. If it wasn't for Associated Industries of Florida, we wouldn't see the favorable tax environment we're in, or the jobs that Governor Scott was so focused on, the quality of life that is the tourism, and the alpha to omega as far as what affects our bottom lines as business owners. And so I wanted you to hear from the leader of Associated Industries to see what's been happening in this last legislative session. When you have session during an election year, it's very interesting, and then you overlay that with redistricting. There's a lot of variables that's going to influence not only the November election, but also laws and regulations that are going to be passed over the course of the year. And the person that is most appropriate is Brewster Bevis. He was recently installed as the new CEO and president of AIF, effective January 1st. And but I'm interested in knowing more about your perspective with the first session as the CEO, but this is not Brewster's first rodeo. He came to AIF in 2011 as a vice president of external affairs. I remember meeting you then. He came from the ABC out of DC, so he had some federal experience and also representing the trades. And then a few years after starting AIF, he became the senior vice president of state and federal affairs. And so he's been in that process of making the sausage. It's not pretty. When you go through and you see all the different special interests and elected officials, it's a true trade of putting policy together that benefits Florida and us as small business owners. He's a father and a husband to Amanda Bevis. He has three beautiful sons that they're raising, and I think the most important part of his bio is he is the son of Rocky Bevis. And so maybe we'll get a story or two that we can hold against Rocky from this point forward. Ladies and gentlemen, join me in welcoming Brewster Bevis.
Thank you, Patrick, and thanks, NEBA, for allowing me to come and speak with you guys today. And like Patrick said, I am Rocky's son, and I can give you some stories. Probably shouldn't say a lot of them out loud in front of a large crowd, although I did at a roast that we had for him several years back. But good to see my mom here as well, who is my parents' much better half. But yeah. But thank you for having me. Like Patrick had mentioned, I am the President CEO of Associated Industries of Florida. We are a broad-based trade association based here in Tallahassee. Unlike other broad-based trade associations, we are simply focused here in Tallahassee. You won't see us, local chapters around the state. Because of that, we are very legislative-centric and agency policy advocacy-centric. That's kind of where our bread is buttered. I've been there, like Patrick had alluded to, about 11 years, up until last September when I became president. In January, I took over the CEO role as well. I led our legislative affairs team, which we have about 23 contract lobbyists. Very robust team. It's like herding cats. But we represent some of the largest corporations here in the state of Florida, and mid-sized businesses and small businesses as well. So we have a very full plate and full agenda every session. And I think, talking about what we have just gone through, it's been different, truthfully, than any of the sessions I've seen before. And that's kind of been a shift over the past few years into a much more populist type of approach, populist type mentality by elected officials here in Tallahassee. And that is one of, truthfully, that, big business is bad, big tech is bad. We have a giant targets on our back. I mean, They don't mind calling out some of Florida's most premier and prestigious companies on a daily basis when they're in committee or on the floor. And then going and turning around and fundraising off of it. So, and even talking to some of the folks up there, and they'll say, yeah, we know, we actually love those companies, but it just polls so well. We're not going to change. And that's the frustration. What we went through, I think, this past session is once you move from good sound policy to just politics, it's very tough to go out and lobby that type of thing. Because like many of them have told me as well, yeah, I'm with you on the policy, but this is it just polls well. The leadership wants me to do this. They're holding appropriations over my head, so this is what it's going to be. And that's frustrating to me. It's frustrating to my members who have done nothing but help the state of Florida grow, bring new jobs into the state of Florida, truly build Florida's tax base to one of a strong tourist economy backed up by agriculture. So it's been frustrating for us to watch friends in the legislature come out and push legislation that is harmful to the business community. And whether that be harmful to large companies, big tech, or big business, that trickles down into small businesses. If we are getting hit with, and one of the tax bill this year, for an example, was focused on, they said it's focused on consumers. Great, let's do a tax rebate for storm hardening, obviously always school supplies. But what they failed to mention was, the current tax rate here in the state of Florida, corporate income tax rate is 3.535%. January 1, that went up to 5.5%. That's over a $1.2 billion tax increase to Florida's companies. That is going to trickle down. That's not coming out of their bottom line. People, consumers, and businesses, small companies, are going to be paying more for the goods and services they are provided by these companies that are paying more. I mean, heck, you're going to be probably paying more to go pick up a 12-pack of Budweiser because Anheuser-Busch is going to be paying more here in the state of Florida. Disney is going to be paying more. Publix is going to be paying more. Florida Power and Light is going to be paying more. And that's just one of the things, that they kind of brushed aside. And the speaker, when asked, is this a tax increase, essentially just said, no, this is consumer-based, and pivoted away very quickly because they know this is a tax increase. And that's, one of the examples of what we've seen. And I think, moving into this new populist direction, which is troublesome, is it's now we see each state legislature and governor in these red states try to out-conservative each other and moving toward these social big ticket items that truly don't necessarily impact the business community on a one-on-one basis, but have a negative impact on us because a lot of, especially the left crowd comes out and starts beating their, chest that, whether it be Disney donated to Republicans who support the abortion bill. Some companies having to engage because their shareholders are forcing them to engage. So, you had issues like the Parental Bill of Rights. You probably know it as the Don't Say Gay bill, despite the fact it never says don't say gay. I personally appreciate that as a father to 3 small children. I appreciate that because I've heard some of the horror stories that happen. Not a business issue, but what did we see? We saw Disney getting drug out, their CEO calling the governor and weighing in on behalf of their employees, many of which are LBGT, all the letters. And the governor immediately turning around and bashing them and fundraising off of it. That's an unfortunate, hit on a good Florida company because they were doing what they thought was right for their employees and something truthfully, God, like I've told a lot of these companies, this isn't your hill to die on. And I think the example that was made of Disney is going to be one that many other companies will keep in the back of their mind. But you see, bills like that, the Parental Bill of Rights, which, like I said, the opposition did a great job of rephrasing it, the Don't Say Gay bill, despite the fact that's not what it does. And then you had the abortion bill as well, moving to a 15-week abortion ban, much like Texas. And it goes back to trying to out-conservative each other, which, truthfully, not a business issue, but a lot of businesses were getting drawn into it. You have a lot of these companies over In other states who have done stuff like this, who, are offering free rides to their employees to go get abortions and things like that, which is, something they decided as a business, but is, drags businesses into a social issue that they shouldn't be necessarily involved in. You also had, the Woke Act, which was based on, some companies' decisions to better inform their employees, rightly or wrongly, whatever your personal preference is, on, being more inclusive to minorities, doing diversity training within your company. And truthfully, I don't care what a business does. I'm one of those, I think, as all businesses, just let us operate how we want to operate. Less government intervention in my business is a good thing. And you have, truthfully, what we've seen is, a mandate on a diversity training at a company gets the ire up of the Florida legislature, and then they want to mandate against a mandate. So now we're mandating because we don't like mandates, but mandating against them. And it's mind-boggling. Your head starts spinning when you start talking about it. And it's also funny, because they kept bringing up on the floor a good Florida company who was doing diversity training. But it's funny to me that the Florida Senate also does diversity training. But that doesn't go with their narrative. So, what we've seen is these huge, big-ticket populist messages that resonate very well with a Republican base that I think, and this is what I've been saying for the last couple of years, and even going into this last session when people we're asking, what do you think you're going to see? And I said, I don't know. What's going to sound really good on a South Carolina stump speech in a crowded conservative Republican primary for president? And I think a lot of what we've seen sounds really good on the South Carolina stump speech. And, it's truly, like I said, once you focus more on politics than policy, we're all kind of in a bad spot. So, those are some of the things we saw this year that were unfortunate and really kind of drug the business community down. Some of the stuff that, I think we didn't see, there's two things we didn't see, which, I think one was good and one was unfortunate. Unfortunately, we didn't see good insurance reform here. And that is primarily in your, property casualty, your homeowner's insurance. We've seen, your premiums skyrocketing. You've seen a lot of companies going insolvent. And their policies being relinquished over to other people or simply being pushed into Citizens, which is, I think many of you know, the insurer of last resort, state-backed. And that is, we did a great job whittling that down. That is, I think, doubled in the last year and a half. And I think a lot of that is due to the lack of addressing the big problem we are seeing in the insurance market, the homeowners insurance market, and that's all these free roofs. You have a lot of companies going around, a lot in Tampa and Central Florida area, going and putting out all these flyers in people's mailboxes. Let us come inspect your roof. You can get a free roof, no insurance cost to you, no cost to you, and they'll get up there and lo and behold, every single time they find a damaged shingle or something like that and put an entirely new roof on your home, costing A, your insurance premiums to go up, and then B, when the insurance company says, whoa, I'm not paying for a whole new roof for this one shingle. Well then, a lot of these plaintiffs' attorneys have partnered with these roofing companies and immediately sue those insurance companies, a lot of times in a sue to settle type of situation, to where not only is your insurance company having to pay for a free roof, now they're having to pay outrageous attorney's fees because they're getting sued. No offense to any unscrupulous roofer or plaintiff's attorney in the room. But that is a huge, huge cost driver that was not addressed this year. Last year and this session, the Senate had some pretty good legislation which addressed roofs. The Florida House was dead set in that they did not want to do anything with the roof problem, and the bill didn't pass. They had one last year that really hadn't taken effect yet, but it still didn't address roofs, which is the huge, huge cost driver we're seeing now. It went from AOB, water damage stuff, to now roofs. But that is truly what is causing these, for the most part, these spikes in homeowners insurance premiums. That needs to be addressed. One of the things we didn't see, which is a good thing, is for the second year in a row, AIF and our partners in the business community, Tax Watch, Retail Federation, Restaurant and Lodging Association, pushed back on a bill that was called Consumer Data Privacy Legislation, which, I think it was well intended to where, you can opt out of companies utilizing your data. They kept saying selling your data. We said, okay, well, let's just outline it and say sale in the bill. They refused to do that. They wanted sell, share, have, medium-sized companies up to your large, big tech companies, which, in addition to that, once, they had a private cause of action in there, which is one of the most favorite things now of this new legislature is sticking private cause of action to allow plaintiffs' attorneys to go sue over everything. But it had a cause of action in there to where, if I was on Amazon or whoever it may be, or went to my local restaurant, 50,000, they have 50,000 data points, a day, easily. And I said, I want to opt out. Well, if I didn't do that within like 3 days and they sent me another thing, I could go out and get a plaintiff's attorney and sue. So how quickly do you think you're going to have class action lawsuits just like that of all of these plaintiff's attorneys running around having people delete your data, wait 3 days, if they send you something else, let's go sue them. That was in the House bill. It was not in the Senate bill. And even with the cost of these plaintiff's attorney suits that we were going to, it would have been this cottage industry. Morgan & Morgan would have been able to buy a brand new jet to fly them out to Hawaii. Was the cost of compliance on businesses. That's something that a lot of these people just simply didn't really care about. We'd tell them how much it cost. We had a data privacy expert that was saying just for a medium-sized company, this just for compliance alone would be up to $300,000 a year, and each year. That is another impact and a hidden tax on the Florida business community that we avoided. Because that's not going to come out of their bottom line. That's going to be passed on to consumers in increased cost of goods and services. And truthfully, like we kept telling the legislature, Tax Watch scored it, I think, about $33 billion, $26 to $33 billion hit on the Florida business community just for compliance costs. That at a time of hyperinflation, that at a time of outrageously high gas prices, supply chain shortages, worker shortages. This is what you need to do for the Florida, to do to the Florida business community. So thankfully, I think with the help of the Florida Senate and their not budging on the cause of action, which the House also refused to budge on, we saw that bill go away for the second year in a row, which was very good. And I think, if you start talking about, things that I think we need to see happen in the legislature that we really didn't see the last couple of years that I hope to see in the next few years, is meaningful tort reform. We have here in Florida a plaintiff's bar run wild. I think we're out of it now, but the last couple years we've every other year have been the #1 judicial hellhole in the nation, and I'm not making that term up, because of how easy it is for the plaintiff's attorneys to sue businesses here in the state of Florida. And a lot of times it's just sue to settle. They're not actually going out there and trying to get these big ticket cases. They know if they go out there and sue, it's heck of a lot cheaper for an insurance company to come out there and settle for $30,000 and potentially $300,000 in attorney's fees and a jury settlement. So they essentially go out there and settle. And your company and your insurance companies are the ones paying for that on the sue to settle stuff. So, I think we really need to see reform in that. In addition, in that tort measure, we really need to do something with truck litigation. The commercial vehicle litigation is skyrocketing here in the state. Our trucking companies, which go back into the supply chain issue, we don't have enough truckers right now on the road. They're not getting goods to where they need to go. But we have these massive nuclear verdicts against these trucking companies that have done nothing wrong. We have here in Florida, it's called comparative fault state, where even if they do nothing wrong, they can be sued for a portion of what they deem the settlement is. For an example, a company over in Jacksonville, they had a tank driver, not a battle tank, but a tanker truck driver sitting at a red light. A car with 3 drunk people ran into it. Very unfortunate situation. They died. the driver was sitting there minding his own business. Well, they got sued because I guess 4 miles back, the guy was going 3 miles per hour over the speed limit. So they said, oh, you're partially at fault for this. And I think for them, there was a $300,000 settlement that their insurance company just said, let's settle it rather than going, if you do a percentage of your comparative fault, it could be, you could be settling at $3 million. I want to avoid that because right now, juries, it's, I think one of the problems with this whole populist message is just give me what's mine. They're probably, despite the fact this poor truck driver is sitting there at a stoplight, a red light, and got hit, they're probably going to award these, poor families $3 million. So the insurance company said, all right, we'll do $300,000. Well, that's a hit to their insurance premium. So I think, doing something with truck insurance and truthfully doing something, if you look at the key root of all this is sue to settle, maybe putting in place, a loser pays type system to where, you're not entitled to attorney's fees. I think hopefully will dissuade some of this. Now, you'll obviously have to figure out the constitutional issue of access to courts, which the plaintiff's attorney and the left-wing people will immediately run to. But, I think something has to be done because we're at the edge of the cliff here and being pushed from behind. But Florida companies and Florida consumers are the ones paying for all of that. So I think, for us, that's something that we really need to focus on. One of the good things we did see this year was Local Business Protection Act, which we supported it. I was kind of between a rock and a hard place. It allowed businesses, if a local government changed their ordinances and they could see a 15% drop in their business profit, or if they've been in business for about 3 years, I think it is, they can sue the government, the local municipality, and once again, another cause of action, which is the favorite thing of today's Florida legislature, at least in the House. But, you are kind of I was in a kind of a rock and a hard place because I do support that. You already have the Burt Harris Act stuff that, a government can reimburse landowners for issues if they are taking some of their stuff. So it's kind of an expansion onto that to allow a business if they did some, new ordinance as a city and you saw a negative 15 or more % decrease in your profits because of that, and you could prove it, that you could sue the government for that. So I'm not necessarily opposed, but I'm just not one of those guys that likes to give anything to the plaintiff's bar, as you can probably tell. But that was something good we saw. I think it's been interesting the last few days talking about one of the issues that is such a cost driver, and that's the insurance reform. The governor kind of did indicate, I believe it was yesterday, in talking to some of the press, that he wouldn't be opposed to calling them back for a special session to address the rising cost of property insurance. If we can come to an agreement, and I think that agreement is on roofs, and if the House Speaker will back off his hardline position on I'm not doing anything to fix the roof issue. So we'll see what happens with that. That's been a frustrating thing. I know for the folks in the Senate, and the Senate sponsored the bill, Senator Jim Boyd, an insurance agent actually out of Sarasota, who kind of gets the issue as an insurance agent and sees these premiums increasing. And then, having his bill stripped every time when it went over to the House, the good roof fixes, I know was frustrating to a lot of people. But that's kind of it for me. I'm happy to answer any questions, but I think if you sum it up, the business community's had a pretty good session, but there's just a lot of things we're seeing now that we didn't see in the past. That it's businesses with a target on their back, which is an unfortunate thing. I hope something that over the next few years changes. But like they said, hey, it pulls well. We're going to keep doing it. So that's unfortunate. But any questions? Yes, ma'am.
Let me do a couple of housekeeping.
Okay.
A couple of housekeeping. One is Hugh will go around with the microphone. Only members can ask questions. But we have plenty of time. And before I ask Brewster to come up and answer them, I wanted to make sure I introduce the other side of the guest table here. And that is starting with the far left, Kaylee Hardy with the Capital City Bank. She's one of our board members, and she's the one that helps get you registered. She's the one that keeps our finances moving, and I just want to recognize her as a board member, as well as Chris Akins with Akins? Akins Creative. All our AV, all the notices that you get on email, our website, the social media, there's someone behind that curtain, and that is Chris. So please give a hand to both of our board members in recognition for their hard work. And I just want to introduce my guest, and you don't need to stand up, Mike Nestle. He is Mr. Stump. And so I don't know if you've seen Mr. Stump around, but he not only took some trees down, but he took some stumps as well. And I'm looking forward to having you as a member. And so with that said, let's get some Q&A going. We got plenty of time. Brewster, if you would be so kind to come on up. And I'll start with the first question. Redistricting. I would be interested in what your take on the redistricting is. And I know AIF does a lot of polling. What are we seeing with the Senate races, the gubernatorial races on the state and federal side?
Yeah, thank you. I think that's a great question, and I think another issue with redistricting that might bring us back into a special session. When the House and Senate passed the congressional maps after the governor said, "I will veto this, I don't bluff," pretty sure he's probably going to veto that congressional map, which would probably bring them back into session to vote on that congressional map. Truthfully, I don't think President Simpson really could care less about the congressional map. The Senate and House maps did pass. They're good maps. They'll, I'm sure, be sued in court. Before they were even drafted, I'm sure the League of Women Voters had their lawsuit already ready to hit send. Just add the date in. So you'll see those pop up. I think what will be interesting in it and why they did this, with an early session is because it'll be wrapped up in courts. And you're going to have a lot of people hanging out there with not really knowing what district they're going to fall into. You have people moving districts, saying they're going to move districts. But in the end of the day, I think it's going to be an increase for the Republicans here in the state when it comes to your state House and Senate, your congressional stuff. If the governor's map is approved, I think will make it a little bit tougher for Al Lawson to come back. But for your state and House Senate seats, I think it would look. I think we'd pick up a few. In the Republican category. Now with governor, we are polling. We do a lot of polling. We have a pretty robust political department. I mean, he is absolutely a juggernaut out there. I don't think Jesus Christ himself could come down right now and beat him in an election. I mean, God bless you, Charlie Crist, but you're fixing to take a howitzer to the chest. But I think he is, what he is doing, and like I said, this populist message, which we saw start under Trump, resonates very well in these primaries and these electoral votes. I mean, what he did with COVID seems to have worked out, and you have a lot of people moving from states to come down here to what he calls the free state of Florida. And what we're seeing is they are registering as Republicans. I think our fear was you'd have a lot of these people moving down, escaping very liberal states, and then voting very liberal when they got here. I don't think that's going to be the case this year. So I think he's done a pretty good job dealing with that, and I think it's going to show in November. Yes, sir.
Brewster, thanks for your talk. Wonderful. I think the world of your pop. My question is this: I watched a lot of squeaking going on down at the beaches, all over Mexico Beach, etc., when that hurricane came through, and heard about attorneys come from South Florida and buying up claims or represent these folks. And it burned a lot of insurance companies. Who has a model for in their state that we can use here that'll help cut these premiums back?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. It's every state is a little bit different. I mean, what our biggest problem, and I don't know how we put ourselves next to beside any other state just because of the storm damage we have down here. It sets us apart. Even if you look at Louisiana is really bad, surprisingly enough. But even like Texas, who has some storm damage stuff, still has nothing like ours. So, I think ours has to be a unique situation or a unique fix other than most. But, just simply to say, for the most part, if your roof is damaged in a non-named storm, you're not going to get a full replacement value of your roof. It's just like your car. If you drive it off the lot, 6 years later you get in a wreck. Do you get your full value of your car insured? No. Should probably be that way with roofs as well. But I can't really answer your question truthfully because I don't think there's any state that is impacted by weather the way we are.
First, I want to say businesses really get accused of bad things like being too rich, so more people can't have money. And what we need to be educating the public about is that businesses give jobs. And I worked, my first 2 jobs as a teenager were for billionaires. And we need to get that message out that it's businesses, rich businesses too, that give jobs to the people so they can live. So I just had to say that. But my question is about car insurance because I don't recall you talking about car insurance. I come to Tallahassee, or into town 3 times minimum a week, and there's always 5 or 6 car wrecks every single day on the radio as I'm here in town. And I know a lot of it is for people texting and driving. We have businesses, big trucks, that their employees are doing that, texting and driving. I see them weaving all across the road and they're speeding, they're breaking the speed limits. But when there's a wreck, we, all the citizens, pay for part of that with increased insurance premiums. Can you do anything with the legislature to cause the people who are causing the wrecks to pay for that and protect our insurance rates?
True. I mean, insurance as a plan is, socializing everybody's risk. So I think it's tough to do that. But I will say, on the texting and driving stuff, we passed a law several years ago, several sessions back, that you can't text and drive here in Florida unless it's convoluted in that, if I'm on my, yeah, exactly. But I think there's a lot of stuff we can do on our auto premium insurance. They were trying to do some PIP reform this year, personal injury protection reform, which would move to there's that $10,000 that if you get in a wreck, you're going to get $10,000. I mean, that is for you to go in and go into the hospital room with, right? Now the problem is, even if you get bumped, you're not injured. Your plaintiff's attorney can come and tell you, I'll get you $10,000. I'm going to keep $2,500 of it, or actually they keep about $7,500 of it. We'll give you $2,500 just for letting us do it. So that's where a lot of this is coming from. And a lot of people, like I said, this popular message, hey, it's free money, bring it on. They were doing some PIP type of stuff to do away with that $10,000. But the problem with that was then you're going to have a lot of these people who have no money going into your emergency rooms. And the cost on that is uncompensated care. That's going to be passed on to you through higher health plan premiums, and also increased costs at your hospital. So the auto insurance stuff is a very, very tricky situation. I think the $10,000 personal injury protection stuff causes a lot of problems, but I haven't seen a silver bullet yet that has been proposed to really fix it, unfortunately. But I do also agree that businesses do create jobs and put food on people's table. I don't think, and it's something that I think we've been hearing a lot of there. It's almost like profits are bad. Profits are not a bad thing. Profits lead to growth, new job opportunities for people buying new homes, bettering their lives. So it's in my list of frustrations. That's one of the bullets in there.
Bruce, I'm going to shift gears for just a minute, ask about a question that I've had. I was reading the Florida Trend just recently that in 2020 that Florida Tax Watch wrote a report on water. It said we just can't wait on water. They're talking about 2040 that will have maxed out and be in some real serious consequences. Your father will probably have me buried by then, but anyway. Is there a concern? Is there any kind of discussion or concern in the legislature to address this very critical issue of water?
There's always, I mean, water is always a huge issue here in the state of Florida. I mean, it's interesting because each section of Florida has their different water issues. I mean, you have your Central Florida Water Initiative talking about where they need to be with Orlando, water supply up here in North Florida. A lot of it revolves around agricultural issues. And then in South Florida, it's really focused on the Everglades stuff. But when it comes to, are we going to run out of water? I don't think we will. But, there are things that we can do. Now, a lot of that is, what people will say, utilizing your wastewater treatment plant water to fertilize crops and things of that nature, maybe non-edible crops or not your strawberries, but, your corn and things like that. So there's always issues to be talked about. One of the things that they've tried to do in the past is, taxing the bottled water companies down here who are drawing spring water. We've been adamantly opposed to that. But, water is always an issue down here. But, it's like anything else. Until you come to that crisis point, or unless it's politically expedient, apparently now, you're not going to have a lot of people coming together to fix it. But, there's always talk, and there's always a water bill or two here in the legislature that is passed.
You got more questions?
As you well know, businesses are being hit with all kinds of increases now. We have to compete with Amazon for labor. If we run vehicles, we've got the cost of gas to deal with. I would like for you to go into a little bit more detail about this corporate income tax increase.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So this originally started, I believe it was 2019, with the Trump Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, which began to lower the Florida. What we would do is we would piggyback onto the corporate tax structure. So we lowered. Now, what we wanted to do this year was decouple from that, so where we could stay level with the 3.35%. The legislature did not want to do that. So it's jumping back up to 5.5%, actually in January. So that's something, that our member companies have been we pushed back very hard on, to allow us to decouple from that, to allow us to maintain that 3.35%, especially in a time like you were talking about, high gas prices, labor shortages, supply chain issues. The last thing we need to do would be taking more money out of the pockets of corporate America or corporate Floridians. But we just didn't see that happen. For one reason or another, we could never really truthfully get a straight answer on why we are seeing a $1.2 billion tax increase here in the state of Florida. And I think a lot of it comes to, and I hate to say this because I have a lot of good friends in the legislature, but it's back when I was, and I'm not that old, to be honest with you, back when I've been working in the Republican Party for quite some time. It's not the same Republican Party we used to be. It's not fiscally conservative. Look at all the money we're getting down from the federal government right now. It is stuff it all in our pockets as much as we can and throw as much as we can out to projects. That's not the way we used to be. So it's just a change in the party from when I was working in it in campaigns till now. And I think that's an issue, and I don't know the answer to it. I'm just pointing out and making an observation. But I don't know how we get over that, because it goes back into that just give me my money type of mentality, and I believe so. I'll have to look at that.
We're known as Sunshine State. Solar energy was a big issue this year. What do you see coming down in the future?
We had that big fight over the net metering issue. We obviously represent the investor-owned utility companies, so we were very much on their side on that. I think what we're going to see is, now the unfortunate problem with that is, they are having to buy back the excess solar energy at a higher rate than they actually, you or I, buy your power at, right? So that is being passed on to us, the consumer, in higher energy prices, because when these houses are running off of solar, that's all great. They're selling back in, and our power companies are having to buy it at a higher rate than they actually sell it for, which then gets passed on to other people who don't have that. And then at night, if they don't have the battery source, or on a rainy day, they're having to draw from the system. Now, the way it's set up with them doing a 5-year 5-year for new customers, not having to, being allowed the net metering, and then I think it's 20 years for existing, is going to have a spiked increase for more solar providers, rooftop solar, which may be a good thing. I don't know, but it's gonna end up costing more in utilities for the average consumer.
How much?
It varies, depends on where you're at.
10% roughly?
I don't know the exact percentage here in Tallahassee, but if you have more people selling power back to the power company at a higher price than they're allowed to sell it to you, it's coming out of somebody's pocket. And I can assure you it ain't our guys.
Why are you opposed to taxing a company like Nestle that pays a very modest fee to suck the natural resources out of the ground and turn around and sell them back to us?
Because they're currently following the law. I mean, you have a consumptive use permit that landowner, that's that landowner's.
But is it a good law?
I think it is. It's your property rights, truthfully. Just like I support going and drilling for oil anywhere we can in the state. Their property rights. Just like a business should be allowed to do what they want to do, whether it be inclusionary diversity training or not. Any other questions?
Yeah, I'll go up the microphones again. I keep hearing that Rubio's in trouble, that his election is not. What's that? Senator Rubio, he's up for re-election. I was asking Brewster what his polling and what his people see. Is that just a bad rumor, or is that something we need to be concerned about if you're a Republican?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. We actually had a political council briefing the other day with our political team. We've seen some. I don't think Rubio is in trouble. I think that's a lot of the media wanting him to be in trouble and trying to get him in trouble. But he's still polling very high. I don't see him being in any type of a real problematic race. I could be wrong, but I wouldn't sweat it. I wouldn't lose too much sleep over Marco Rubio not returning to the U.S. Senate.
We got time for one more question. Yeah.
Brewster, since you mentioned Rubio, would daylight savings be a boost for Florida?
You know what? Truthfully, that's when the bill passed down here. We had to pass one down here and send it up there. We actually opposed it, primarily because of the problems it would cause our large national corporations in doing HR stuff like payroll and all of them having to be on different systems Florida's on this time, but their corporate's on that time, and it would cost national companies operating over several states a lot of money to kind of comply with all that kind of stuff and changing their systems.
We already have those issues with different time zones.
We do. So yeah, it's just like when Ed Ball wanted all of his mills to be in the one time zone, so you see. Port St. Joe being in the Eastern time zone when all the rest of it's over in the Central time zone because he didn't want his payroll department to have to deal with two different time zones. Try doing that over a 50 state, I guess a couple states don't do it, Arizona or whatnot, but 48, 47 states. Be costly. Thank you all.
Thank you, Brewster. One of the things I learned from Brewster from your presentation is partisan anymore. The free market, less government type of Republican has really been more replaced by the populist, and so whatever's kind of going. So I think that's important for a group like ours, at which we are bipartisan. There is a nice mixture of different parts of the spectrum. So that to me tells me from a grassroots bottom-up standpoint that our issues, it doesn't matter if you're a Democrat or a Republican, we have to be united in our front, in our advocacy. And I never thought I would ever think that the House was more pro trial lawyer than the Senate. Traditionally, the Senate has been more moderate, more friendly with trial lawyers. And so this is something that's a newsflash for me, that the House is now more of a trial lawyer bastion. So the bottom line is we need to keep our working and our diligence We're available to you, Brewster and AIF, if there's any kind of marrying up of, of interest, especially here from the Tallahassee perspective. So thank you for coming here today, and we'll see you next month, and have a great rest of your afternoon.